Outside of the cabinet department, so even further away from the control of the president, is regulatory agencies. Sometimes also known as independent regulatory agencies, sometimes known as regulatory commissions, but just the regulatory part is the most important part. Uh, they are regulatory agencies because if you think about what a regulator does, they monitor and control the behavior of something. And our regulatory agencies are going to monitor or oversee a particular sector of our economy. All right, so they're going to oversee an aspect of our economy that is necessary to monitor in order to protect the public good. So the government steps in and protects us from some kind of private sector economic activity. Okay, Congress is the one that creates the regulations that protect the people. And since economic sectors affect everybody, these agencies protect the people by making sure that companies and people in these economic sectors aren't corrupt. Okay, in this way, they are kind of mirroring the judicial branch. Okay, so they definitely have an judicial function. They adjudicate. They settle disputes over the rules and regulations, or if a company breaks the rules, they're the ones, these regulatory agencies are the ones that have to step in and fine them. Probably the one regulatory agency that you are most familiar with is the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC. They set the rules and regulations for how mass media must operate. Okay, so you can't see gratuitous violence or nudity or cussing in the middle of the day on a Saturday on ABC because the FCC says there could be some little kid watching it, and we have to protect that little kid whose parents might not be there to monitor their activities. We have to protect that little kid from seeing such horrible things on television. So the FCC watches ABC's economic activity or behavior, because putting on a television show is economic activity. And if ABC violates that, then the FCC will fine them. And of course, y'all all know this was the Justin Timberlake, Janet Jackson Super Bowl breast exposure on CBS at the Super Bowl a couple of years back. And the FCC fined Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson and CBS for allowing such nudity to scar the children of America. Okay, each regulatory agency is headed by a commissioner. The commissioner gets their job by being appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate. We have a new federal chairman, not called a commissioner, but the same thing. Janet Yellen. Janet Yellen governs a commission of about 5 to 12 people that monitor the money supply for the entire country. Now, you've heard me say again and again that this Federal Reserve Chairman is the true person who runs your country. Okay. Now, the reason that is because that person is completely independent. The president can't fire Janet Yellen. Congress can't fire Janet Yellen. She sits in that office, like most commissioners, for 15 years, pretty much unchecked and able to operate without any monitoring. Every once in a while, Congress, the financial committees in Congress will have her come in and say, why did you do what you did with the money supply? But for the most part, she operates completely independently. These commissioners are closely involved with interest groups. Now, remember, what type of interest group has grown the most since 1970s? Business interest groups, right? So the rules and regulations these commissions enforce directly affect the businesses of the business and the profits of multi-million-dollar corporations. So, for example, the big Wall Street financial institutions, they're going to hire interest groups, and they're going to hire lobbyists who used to work for independent regulatory agencies. You remember the revolving door? And they are going to constantly contact the commissioners, these interest groups representing these big financial institutions. They're going to constantly contact these commissioners to make sure that when they're enforcing regulations and rules, that they're not hurting the business's bottom line or profit margin too much. Let me go back to that real quick. Regulatory agencies, some common ones that besides the FCC that you need to know. The Federal Election Commission, remember that was established in 1970s after FECRA and FACRA. And then the Security and Exchange Commission, they monitor the activities of stock market and Wall Street traders. Even further outside of the cabinet is government corporations. These are your offices or agencies that perform a service for a fee. Generally, they're performing a service that is very important, that the government feels must be provided, and it has to be provided at a regulated fee regardless of demand or supply. Okay, so for example, the United States Postal Service. The federal government believes that the delivery of mail and communication is so important that they have to provide that service, and they have to put caps on those fees of sending mail in order to protect the people. Yes, what the Postal Service and what a lot of these government corporations do could be private. A private company could provide the service, and they might. Like, look at the United States Postal Service. There are other mail carriers out there that are private companies, like UPS and FedEx. You know, we don't have to use the Postal Service, but the government keeps the Postal Service there for us. So there will be a guarantee way for people to be able to send mail without a private company upping the price so much and trying to gain a profit off of the delivery of mail. Other government corporations include the Tennessee Valley Authority, which provides electricity for Appalachia, and Amtrak, the train station. But a lot of times, government can keep the service cheaper than the private sector, so that's why we don't have privatization. And again, we don't want to privatize these particular services necessarily, because we want to make sure that they're being provided, these services are being provided for the sake of the public good, not for profit. Independent executive agencies or independent agencies are basically all of the other agencies that do something that don't operate within a cabinet structure. Like, they don't really fit. The CIA is one of these. You can't really put the CIA in with another cabinet structure. You can't put the CIA in with the Department of State, because how are you going to have diplomacy while you're spying on people? You can't put them in the Department of Defense, because if your spies are part of the military, then that's automatic aggression. So the CIA is outside of cabinet department. NASA doesn't fit in any other cabinet department. You can't really put it under Department of Transportation, because we don't even have shuttles anymore to transport people, so it wouldn't fit there. Can't really put it under Department of Energy or Commerce. It doesn't quite fit there. Department of Defense would suggest the only reason we have NASA is for missiles. Oh wait, that is the only reason we have NASA. Moving on. And the people who head the independent executive agencies are appointed by the president, and they serve at the president's will. Again, examples would be like the CIA and NASA and the Social Security Administration. And that's it with the organization. You'll do a flow chart in class with it, and when you kind of see it laid out in a flow chart, it makes a little bit better, you know, it's easier to understand how that works. Yeah, that's it. Moving on to how bureaucrats get their job.